Hello and welcome to our third video, topic 3 with chapter 8, and today we're going to be talking about third-party politics. When we talk about political parties, and we look at them in terms of countries, countries have two different types of party systems. They're either going to be a one-party system or a multi-party system. Alright, one-party systems, pretty much self-explanatory. It's a country that has one political or one dominant political party. And in most cases, the party is going to be the government, or at least going to be a huge component of that government structure. These are generally going to be found in nations that have authoritarian governments. And in these one-party systems, other parties are going to be outlawed, or they're going to be so regulated by that dominant party that they really aren't going to act or be able to serve as a true political party. Examples of countries that have one-party dominant systems are communist countries, or countries that have taken on the communist ideology and formed political parties. And you can see Cuba, China, North Korea, and Vietnam are examples of one-party systems. All right, the other type of system is a multi-party system, and that is the most common type of system that you'll find around the world. And normally these systems are going to take on parliamentary type governments, parliamentary systems, unitary powers. They are going to elect representatives, and from that representative body, you're going to have those representative bodies that have the majority party is going to go ahead and elect the executive portion or make government. So you have a fusion of the representative body and the executive body, and that's really what makes a parliamentary system. A lot of the time, these parliamentary systems do not have a clear majority with one party, because again, when we talk about multi-party, we're talking about not like the United States, which we'll get to here in a second, where there are two dominant parties. But in a lot of cases, you're talking about 4, 5, 6, could be as many as 8 different political parties who will all earn seats in that representative body. So in most cases, in these systems, the dominant government has to have a majority. They must have a majority to make government. So they go into coalition governments. They have to go into agreements with other parties to get that majority of seats. A good example, a not too common example, is the coalition government that currently exists in Great Britain. Great Britain is a two-party dominant system and has only had a handful of coalition governments in the last 100 years, but we're in the midst of a coalition government. It's a coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. All right, and they band together to make government. For example, two examples here, both France and Italy, you'll see there they have, France has 5 major parties and Italy has 10. In Italy, a lot of variance in the number of parties that are actually in competition. All right, here in the United States, we have a two-party system. And again, we fall into that multi-party category, but we're kind of special. There are only about a dozen other nations that have two-party dominant systems, where there are only 2 true competitors for voice or power in government. Minor parties do exist in these systems. These are all sometimes called third parties, but the 2 parties are going to dominate elections and public policy. All right, third party. Definition: any party that exists outside of one of the 2 major parties. And again, a third party is something special here when we talk about a two-party system. Here we have Republican and Democrat are the 2 major parties, and we have tons of other minor parties. Okay, so they can also be called minor parties, third parties, same thing. Third parties are formed here in the United States when a group of citizens who share common interests believe that both of the major parties do not meet a specific want, need, or belief. So again, it's a choice that's made by an individual here in the United States that rejecting the traditional Democratic or Republican viewpoints, and they're going to go ahead and throw their interests, their vote, towards a third party. In the United States, there can be any number of political parties. There is no steadfast rule that in the Constitution that limits us to just 2 parties. Now, there are factors that are going to limit the number of parties, and again, we've had pretty much a 2-party system because of some institutional barriers to third parties, and we'll talk about those here in a second. Now, third parties here in the United States have really never been widely accepted, and they've never won the presidency per se, but they have had limited success in local elections, governorships, and they have had seats in Congress. So they, again, are not dominant, but they definitely can influence major elections, and they can have great impact in your lower level elections. All right, third parties. There are three types of third party, and these are pretty general. All right. One, you have your single issue party, where the third party is going to have a focus on one specific issue that they're going to build their party upon. It can be an economic, it can be a social, or it can even be a moral issue. And again, these parties will be focused on one specific issue. Let's per se, abortion would be a good example. We also have ideological parties, which are much larger in their scope and their size, and they're looking for overall change in a society. And again, here in the United States, we have had socialist parties, we have had a communist party or different versions of communist parties throughout our history. They just haven't gained much traction. And then finally, we have another example here of the splinter party, which is you're going to see a little piece or a segment of a larger party is going to break off, generally due to a disagreement, and they're going to run on their own. All right, so you see three different types here. The single issue, which is going to be focused on that one important idea. Two, the ideological party, which is looking for a big overall or overarching change to take place. And three, a splinter party, which is going to be one of the major parties basically splintering or breaking away because of some kind of disagreement. All right, an example of a splinter party is going to be Teddy Roosevelt and his disagreements with him and his followers during the 1912 election, all right, where the Bull Moose Party was formed. All right, the first example of true third-party impact is going to be the Bull Moose Party with Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt's going to get 27% of the vote and 88 electoral votes. He is going to split the Republican ticket between himself and Taft, and he's going to open the door for Woodrow Wilson to win. All right, so this is a great example of a third party not winning an election, but having a big impact on the result. All right, and in this case, the Democrat taking the presidency is going to be one of the few times during the era of Republican dominance in that party era. The next example we'll use is the 1968 American Independent Party. George Wallace, an Alabama governor, is going to lead that American Independent Party to win about 13.5% of the popular vote, and more importantly, 46 electoral votes. They're going to split the Democratic vote, and it opens the door, helps Nixon win the presidency. All right, and this ushers in this age of de-alignment and divided governments. The next third party that we'll look at here in terms of impact is going to be in 1992, the Reform Party, led by Ross Perot, is going to garner about 19% of the popular vote. Not going to win any electoral votes, but he's going to garner about 20% of the popular vote. He's going to split the Republican vote away from George H.W. Bush, and he's going to open the door and help Bill Clinton win the presidency, a Democrat. So as you can see, third parties have a huge impact, or can have a huge impact, in the outcome of a presidential race. All right. One of the big problems third parties face is longevity, or staying power. One of the big issues here is that the great ideas that third parties can bring forward, innovations that people would really like to see, ideas, they really don't have staying power, because what happens is the major parties are going to take those great ideas and, let's say, one election, and by the time we get to the next election or national election in 4 years, the major parties have taken those good things and they've integrated them into their platforms. All right, and that kind of goes along with that idea that we have these two large dominant powers. All right, obstacles to third parties. In almost every state, third parties are required to gain a specific amount of support prior to an election in order to be included on the state ballot. This could be 10,000 signatures. This could be 20,000 signatures. Again, we're talking about petitions statewide. Some states have rules on showing support across a state, across the different voting districts. So again, a third party who has limited funds, limited name recognition, limited volunteers is going to have a hard time making sure that they get on all the ballots. Republican and Democratic candidates automatically make it onto the ballot. Third-party candidates have to work for it. The use of winner-take-all and single-member districts, with the idea is, the person who has the most votes wins. We don't divide seats. It's winner-take-all. really limits opportunities for third parties when you have two dominant parties competing for power. And then finally, third parties are going to really struggle for name recognition. They're going to struggle to raise enough funds to compete, to buy advertising, and to get their message out. So third parties, again, institutionally are very limited and have to jump through a bunch more hoops than the two major parties. That's our video on third parties. Thank you for watching.